right, welcome everyone. This is the 9th episode of Lifestyle Matters. I'm your host, Raewyn Guerrero, the founder of WellWorks, functional medicine health coach and lifestyle medicine advocate. And I am joined today by the lovely Lara Lesperance. Have I said your name right?
Have indeed, yeah.
Okay, great, wonderful. Lara is an amazing holistic health coach. She has a background in pharmaceuticals and she's also an ex-midwife turned yoga facilitator and cacao practitioner. Lara, you also have a really interesting story. That's why I like interviewing people like you, because you have kind of you were doing the traditional, medicine, Western medicine way. And now you kind of you've made the switch. Can you tell us a little bit about how that happened and what was your personal journey that led you there?
Yeah, sure. So my journey started with midwifery at the beginning. And that was my passion, to become a midwife and to support others and help others. To keep it brief, I guess I also did cabin crew, and I did, so then I went into pharmaceuticals. So all my careers basically were around giving out to others, and I guess sort of put me into my masculine side. So that was all my background, and it was, like you say, in Western, and it was pharmaceuticals and midwifery led, which was still very much the medical model today, sadly. But basically, essentially what happened was all of those careers and all of that striving led me to have dis-ease, what I call dis-ease in my own body. I literally I burnt myself out. Essentially, I wasn't listening to my body. I was probably quite detached from my body at that time, but not even realizing it. I didn't know that at the time. And I had just completely gone down a road of burning myself out. And then I had, in 2012, I had a serious horse riding accident, which then led to having ME. In 2012 to 2015 when I was diagnosed. And then I went on a healing journey. And from that point, I found yoga, I found meditation. I changed many things in my life because with my careers being as they were in midwifery, pharmaceuticals, cabin crew, all literally around giving out so much, but also not sleeping well, not eating correctly, and generally not listening to the signals in my body. So I was on my recovery for ME, and then I sadly had a stroke in 2017. And that's when I really feel like my true healing begun. So that was a clear message that I needed to change something even more drastically. And then I was later in that year diagnosed with MS, multiple sclerosis. So that it's really bizarre, because I look back at that time and I know that my pharmaceuticals, my midwifery and all the things that happened to me with ME, my stroke and MS were all to lead me to where I am today. It was part of the journey. So I love everything about what happened. I love all the lessons I've learned in the past that have brought me to be a yoga facilitator, cacao practitioner, and a holistic health coach. And each one of those things, because it started with the yoga, but each one of those things has then led to obviously doing my holistic health coaching. And that also, in that journey, I found cacao, which I know you enjoy as well, Ray. So it's, yeah. You got your cacao. I've got a cacao ceremony as well after this evening. That I'm holding, so I've got two things today back to back.
Well, yeah, tonight is new moon. I think the moon, it's at 7 o'clock or something. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to host it on today as well, because I have always found it's been very powerful for me personally when I have set intentions around the new moon. Now, just for people who don't know my story as well and why this is so important for me and self-care, I have a history of anxiety, like familial anxiety, as well as my own IBS and anxiety. And I tried all the traditional Western routes seeing the gastroenterologist, endocrinologist, urologist, psychologist, psychiatrist. I did it all. I was on what I call the medical merry-go-round. So kind of similar to your story, which is why I feel like it resonated so much with me, sort of trying all the traditional ways of looking to get well, but only ending up on more medications and becoming more and more exhausted and burnt out by being alive. And I was only in my 30s when all this was happening. So I didn't feel like I had a great trajectory. I think I was very sad and despondent about the future. And then, like you though, I kept looking, and the whole, when you said that you really feel like everything's led you to where you are right now I can look back and be like, wow, if I hadn't gone through all of those things, it wouldn't have led me to where I am. So I really have a passion now for helping people realize that, the thing that you're going through right now that might feel really painful, it can actually be your greatest teacher, because your symptoms are there to get you in touch with your body, to get you to pay attention to what's going on. They are signals, right? And it's usually because we've been living out of balance, because I like to remind people that 95% of illness is actually stress related. And that's from the CDC and also from Stanford University. So that that means a lot of, our health outcomes are within our control. So there's a lot that we can do through diet and rest and exercise, stress reduction and supplementation to improve, our trajectory. And I wanted to ask you a few questions in terms of self-care. I know we framed this rituals for self-care for tonight, because the way that we've been I think 21st century living has always been about doing more, achieving more. We glorify being busy. I remember in my old job, being booked back to back, or being double booked or triple booked. Sometimes like, oh, I'm triple booked. That was like a badge of honor because you're in demand. And I don't know if it was the same thing for you, where you were just sort of like living at this pace that's completely unsustainable for an actual living organism. Maybe for a robot, it would be okay. But for a human, it just wasn't something that, it just wasn't working. And it works temporarily, don't get me wrong, and you can get ahead so far, right? But was that your experience as well, that you were just sort of like running on that conveyor belt? Yeah.
I mean, obviously with midwifery, it's, all the time. Babies come all times of day and night. And I actually practiced as a small caseload midwifery. So we had a caseload of women in the community. So we were on call a lot. So like I said before, you're not eating properly, you're not sleeping properly. And then the pharmaceutical side is all driven by sales. So, and that is the mentality of sales generic, that's generic across all sales industries, that, if you're the person that's working, and this whole, that it's really interesting that you said what you said, because this whole of sleep when I'm dead, and the irony in that is that you're actually likely to die a lot quicker purely because you think, like you say, this badge of honor that we seem to think is like, people think being busy is a great thing, but actually being busy, equally what I would say I've learned across my journey is that being busy doesn't mean being productive. And that's the difference. If you're someone who's actually productive in your work, you probably have a lot more time. And that is just by its very nature, because taking time for self-care and ritual, which historically, human beings did, there's even around birth, death, all of those things, ritual was a big thing of what we did. You see it in tribes, that's how we were. But we've somehow got so disconnected from inherently who we are and nature, which is a big part of, being connected and self-care. As simple as something like going for a walk in nature can revive. We all know that when we're in nature, we feel good. So it can be something so simple.
I totally 100% agree with you. I think even more so now as we are all in lockdown. I think everyone on this call is in the UK. So even more so now, like it's winter, you're locked down, you're locked in because it's colder, you're not spending time going outside. And our whole worlds have become our screens. We've got multiple devices. We've got our laptops or computers, and then we've got our tablets, and then we've got our phones, and and then the television, and we're kind of plugged into this virtual world where we're not connecting with other human beings. We're trying to connect through these devices, but real authentic connection is missing. And there are lots of studies actually that are showing that when we are on our phones and we're scrolling, we actually stop breathing. So our breathing becomes there are lots of pauses between when we take breaths, and that leads to a lot of anxiety. Right. So that can actually induce panic by not breathing, a physiological panic within the body, because it increases cortisol. And I don't think a lot of people are aware of that, and they're not realizing how much harm is being done by being on their devices all the time. And I have a funny story. I mean, I wake up and I pick up my phone and I check the news like I get, which is a really bad thing. And I'm going to stop doing that, because yesterday I promised myself, I just had a birthday, and I said, look, New Year, I am not starting off in that headspace of being all, I can't believe what the government's doing, and I had like the best day and I was like, wow. And then today, by contrast, I fell back into my old habit. I picked up the phone, I started checking news, and then I was like annoyed the second I opened my eyes, and I'm like, nope, gotta stick with, if you're going to be happy, don't be glued into that world. Like, I should get up and get outside and go for my walk, like you're saying, and reconnecting with the natural world and not this virtual.
And it sets the day, that it sets the tone for the day. That's, if we fundamentally step into that space, or we allow ourselves to go there, for everybody, nobody's alone in this, because we all do it, and there's pressures on everybody to respond and all those things. But essentially, it's not setting your day up in the right way in order for you to have a really good, productive day, especially if it builds anxiety. Like technology is funny, because I was running around so anxious this evening thinking, this has never happened. Why is my MacBook doing this tonight of all night? I was set up in a different space completely. Even that. So that's caused me a level of anxiety this evening, because technology doesn't always work. So that builds even more anxiety on top of what you might be scrolling, or, if somebody has sent something or you've forgotten something, instantly you're in that space, aren't you, to start the day.
Exactly. So I think one of our first rituals for self-care, if we're going to keeping with our theme, is waking up and actually not spending time on our devices. And
I keep it out of the room. That's what I do. I keep it out of my bedroom, because I shut them down, but I don't like them in my room, because it stops you doing that. It means you have to go and get it. So that sort of prevents me doing that, and I just go straight into my yoga space in the morning and do my morning ritual.
That's amazing. So what is your morning ritual, just out of curiosity? Because now that you've been diagnosed with this, I mean, MS is a neurodegenerative autoimmune condition. How do you obviously look very well. How are you keeping well?
So it's hard work. I'm not going to lie that it's not hard work. It is hard work. But essentially, because I've learned, ritual has taught me to tune into my body. I love to use the phrase, and it was Ram Dass, I think, that said, tune out to tune in. And it really is that. And if you take the time in the morning to literally do that, I feel that's where my healing is every day. Because it enables me, as most of you will know here, that it's about listening to the signals within the body. And if you take the time, my life used to be jump out of bed and you're straight to work and all the chaos of the house and everything that goes with that. Whereas, now I've learned that my self-care ritual is so important in order to stay well. And that means tuning into my body. So I essentially get up, I go into my yoga space, I light a candle always, because that's part of ritual for me. I generally will sage or use Palo Santo to cleanse the space. And I am a big lover of essential oils, so I'll always use essential oil of some form. And then I journal generally. I also will always make cacao. So I make my cup of cacao and I generally drink that in the morning, and then I'll sit and journal. And then out of that, I might pull an oracle card or I meditate. And that's sort of essentially what my morning ritual looks like. So there's quite a lot in there, and it takes quite a long time to do that. And I have to invest the time. What I wanted to say in relation to ritual, though, is that I don't feel that it should become something that causes another stress. So it's about making it work for you. So that's just like, that's what I do because I have the time in the morning to do it. But I also am aware that lots of people don't. And I think it's about incorporating little pockets of self-care throughout the day. And that might just be a simple 3 breath practice, 3 conscious breaths, for example, in the middle of the day. It might be that you take your shoes off and you go and do an earthing practice first thing in the morning with your cup of tea outside. You know, there's real simple things that you can do to incorporate that throughout your day. It doesn't have to be anything grandiose, essentially.
I totally agree with you, because I think sometimes when I talk to clients or potential clients, there's a little bit of a barrier when, you know, we start saying, look, I'm going to need you to spend time, breathing or meditating. And they're like, I don't have time to meditate. And I'm like, no, it doesn't have to be like you're sitting down for half an hour, being the Dalai Lama or anything. Like, this is more about just being conscious, being mindful, actually just tuning in. And when I run certain types of workshops or seminars, I show people that they can do it in like 2 minutes. And actually, we've got 2 people on the call tonight who've actually been in one of my workshops about a couple of weeks ago. So they know, Inez knows what I'm talking about, and Charlene knows what I'm talking about. So it's something that, you can incorporate, as self-care practices. Don't have to be like, oh, I'm going to have to go have a bath tonight, or I need to go for a massage every week, or I need acupuncture, or, like you were just saying, like, not everybody's going to have time in the morning to sit down and, make cacao or whatever. But just that practice of consciously slowing down, of breathing, of thinking about what you're doing. I've started a recent meditation on, it's by Sadhguru. I don't know if anybody here is familiar with him. If you are, just put a yes in the chat for me. And if you're not, put a no, so then I'll know. Anybody familiar with Sadhguru? Nope. Okay, well, famous Indian mystic and philosopher. He's still alive. And he runs leadership workshops all around the world as well. So he's quite an inspiration. And he's got this wonderful meditation where, you're supposed to breathe in and out. And as you breathe in, you say, I am not the body. And then as you breathe out, and not even the mind. And it's about dissociation. And obviously the repetition of mantra is a very powerful thing. And it doesn't last long. It's probably like a 10-minute meditation, but it gets you into a very deeply relaxed state, because repetition is one of the ways that we induce relaxation and get the parasympathetic nervous system to switch on. Now, you don't have to do it for 10 minutes, but I remember in my old days when I used to go and lock myself in a bathroom stall in Barclays, when I would be crying, I'd cry, run away into the bathroom just to have a breath or two. And I swear that, my meditation was the only thing that kept me, sane during that very, very dark time. I would sit in there and I would breathe in. I'm like, I breathe in, I am, and then exhale, relaxed, or I am calm, or I'm at peace, and just doing that for like 3 rounds would just center me enough for me to be able to go back outside, sit at my desk, and get through the rest of, my day. So I don't think, I know Inez was asking, not Inez, sorry, Charlene was asking, how long, should self-care sessions be? And it really depends on what the session is, how much time you've got. Like, if you can just decide, like, today I'm just going to do one thing that looks after myself, that's good for me. If I know that I've got tons of obligations and commitments to other people, can I set aside 5 to 10 minutes that's devoted to my inner world, to nurturing that inner world, to either journaling or breathing or bathing, sitting in a nice bath or showering or whatever it is. I know some mothers, unfortunately, I'm working with a lot of mothers recently, and they're all are struggling to just managing to get a shower because of the children, and because everybody's at home right now with the whole with the lockdowns. So rituals don't have to be, grandiose, but like you said, just something being done with intention can be a ritual.
I always feel it's like my yoga. I teach my students in yoga that, it's better to do 10, 15 minutes of yoga every day than just go and do a 1 3-hour session, for example. It's so much better to just incorporate. And that's what I'm saying about the day. Like, I think when we, especially as women, because we give out so much, but also especially as women, we tend to think that it has to be like we need a whole day to go to a spa day, or we need a whole day to go and get another therapy. And it has to be this big thing. For me, it's really about incorporating those little pockets, like you say, to tune in. And another good way to do it is when you're boiling the kettle in the morning, or making your coffee, or making your cacao, that first drink, whatever it is that, floats your boat first thing in the morning. I say to my students, who want to practice their balanced tree pose whilst you're waiting, instead of running around when you're boiling the kettle, or do something whilst you're standing there waiting for it to boil instead. And that could be 3 intentional breaths, for example. So it's just something that really makes you be aware that you're in this body and this is what you're occupying, and actually checking in and asking yourself, because I think something else we do as women, we generally ask everybody else how they are. The first thing you do when you see your friend is, how are you? And yet, do we ever ask ourselves, how are you today? And I love to ask myself that question. It really, it's become a practice because, first and foremost, if I'm not fine, then not everything else is going to be fine either. So it's really about asking yourself, how do you feel today? And quite often, that can change so much in a day. Then you have an appreciation for, if I have a long list of to-dos, what do I need to prioritize? Because actually today, my body's saying it's tired. And that's how I manage my own, my MS. I really tune into, can I do that today? Is that achievable? And then instead of beating myself up that I can't do it, it's just accepting that today my body isn't so good, maybe. So yeah, but I think that's a really important practice, because we're so good at asking everybody else, but we don't really ever ask ourselves how we are.
Amazing. I think you hit on a beautiful point there about women just being the people who are always nurturing others and not necessarily giving back to themselves. And it's that old adage, you've got to put your own oxygen mask on first before you can help other people. You can't help anyone if you are tanking and you've got no energy, or you are sad, or you are low. You've got to be able to look after yourself. So Charlene says, thank you for answering the question, by the way, the question about like, how often should we practice self-care and how long should it be? It's like a muscle, just try and it's like, I like to think of it, actually the best way is like brushing your teeth, right? You don't brush your teeth once and then you're done. Like, you do it twice a day. So that's a self-care ritual in itself. But in terms of like nurturing that inner world and nurturing your mental health, and making sure that you're conserving energy, or doing things that give energy rather than drain energy from you. Being mindful of that is quite important. And you can think of it, and I know that you two were on my talk a couple of weeks ago, but remember I mentioned something about like a profit and loss sheet, or like a spreadsheet, where you're kind of like, okay, what are the things, put a list of what are the things that are giving me energy, and then make a list of the things that are taking energy from you. And then you can quantify them, put numbers next to them, be like, my family gives me energy and it's like a 2, but they also take energy from me and that's like a 5, and you could start adding it up and seeing like what your energy score is at the end of the day, right? So there are ways for us to practice and be mindful of the things that are actually nurturing and that help build our bodies up, because so much that is around us can actually be very what we call catabolic, breaking down the body. So if we look at what we're consuming, whether that is from a food perspective or from even just, relationships, jobs, obligations, we have to consider is this something that is going to help build me and build my body and build my strength, or is it something that's going to detract and break me down? So if we kind of look at the world in that way, and we look at our experiences and our conversations and the interactions that we're having with people and the work that we're doing, or the situations that we find ourselves in, as well as the food that we're eating, because that always is a huge factor. That will help us make sense very quickly of where we should be allocating our resources, where we should be channeling energy, right? Do you agree?
Totally agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really good point. Yeah.
So in terms of how you okay, so we know how you start your morning. So you have your rituals in the morning, and that's a nice, easy, gentle way to begin a day, which I personally love. I used to have to go into work for 6:30 in the morning in Canary Wharf. And I'm so grateful that I work for myself and I don't do that anymore. I totally enjoy having very slow mornings and kind of coming into, consciousness very, very easily. I don't know, are there any other practices apart from your cacao and lighting your candles that you could recommend to people in this group? And if anybody has questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we're going to start answering some of them now.
Yeah, I just wanted to come back to that point of, I obviously coaching people as well. They say, I just don't have time in the morning because they're busy mums, because they're working. And what I would always say, it's so worth investing. I say set your alarm 10 minutes earlier, because it is so worthwhile. And going back to the productivity side, you will be much more productive. And we all have that dread of I just don't want to get out of bed. But the amount of people that I've coached that actually say that when they've done that and they've incorporated that into their day, they literally feel that they've already given themselves something for the day, and then they can carry on and give out to everybody else. So that's sort of my main thing. I also, in the summer, I would do my meditation outside, because then I'm getting the benefits of nature as well. I always, every day, go for a walk in the fresh air, in nature. If you have to work, is there a way that you can walk part of your journey to work? And because that would lead you to be more mindful before you arrive in a space. It's like having, or even if you're driving home, for example, sometimes to just drive home without the radio, without anything else, just with your thoughts. So I don't know if anybody's heard of the Gene Keys here, but the Gene Keys by Richard Rudd. And it's big on contemplation. So it's about self-discovery, if you like, but it's big on contemplation. And for people that are not, who don't meditate, contemplation is good. So there are times, there are pockets in your day where you can contemplate things, something that might be relevant in your life, for example. And then outside of those things, the other things that I do is obviously my yoga. I think, again, we have this perception that yoga is you have to be on a yoga mat. Yeah, that's the one, Ray. Really, it's self-study, essentially. A bit like the human design, if you might have heard of human design. So, but this is with Richard Rudd, and it's a crucial tool for me at the moment in terms of learning more about myself and how I function in the world. But going back, those things that you can just incorporate throughout the day, the little things, they are the things that add up. And it might just be sitting in quiet contemplation as you drive home or walk home or cycle home or whatever it is that you do. If you're locked down, the toilet's always good, or the bath, the bathroom, even showering. I really use my shower as a cleansing tool. The other thing that I like to do is I have an infrared sauna, which is huge for me. And that's half an hour in my own space, just with my thoughts. And it enables me quite often, I'll just sit in quiet contemplation, or I'll do my meditation there. But these are all that, it looks different for everybody, I guess is what I'm trying to say. For what I think the key to having a good self-care ritual is one that works for you, time-wise, and it's building that as a habit. So once you identify actually, I really like this and this is going to work for me in the time restraint that I have, then you will do it. Because if it's something that you can't commit to, you'll fall off and you won't do it. But if you find something that works in the time frame, you'll go for it, you'll do it, and then that becomes a habit. And it's right, I think you were saying about, when you, because of the wiring and the way we work as well, that will then become a practice. And over time, you'll definitely see and feel a benefit from it.
Absolutely. So we have a couple of questions, and one of them is, can we go into detail on the cacao ceremony? I'm going to get into that because that's actually how I was planning to wrap this up, because I actually have got a cacao with me. So I was going to talk about that, but can I just jump to Charlene's question? If you are at a large deficit, how do you even begin to get started? How do you even get started? Because it feels intimidating to even begin. All right, great question, and one that I hear a lot. Obviously, you have to be ready to change, and then you've also got to really weigh up, what are the drivers for you to get started? Like, where is it that you want to be? If you were going to look at your life, let's say a year from now, what would you have had to have done in order to get to where you want to be? So what is that vision of your future self that you want to step into? And then look at it backwards. Like, okay, well, what would I have needed to do in order to get there? And what are the steps? And then you can just keep breaking it down. Okay, so like 12 months from now, this is who I want to be. I want to be this happy, healthy, vibrant, calm person, and then start working backwards. So like, all right, well, how do I go about doing that? Like, who do I need to work with in order to help me get there? Because usually you need help to do that. It's not something it's always better when you've got a coach, or you've got a partner or a buddy or someone in some sort of community or support system in place that will help you achieve that goal. We always tend to do better when we work in tandem with either a group or with expert guidance and support, because everybody knows what to do, but do we ever just do it? It's always easier to cop out, to make excuses, to not do things. So I think when you say that it feels intimidating to even begin, like, set the goal, who you want to be, then look at all the little action steps and milestones that you need to put in place in order to get there, and then work out what are the things that you can do on your own, what are the things that you're going to need help with, and then look at some of the biggest ones and then break those down into smaller steps as well. That's usually the way. And then you were just saying, Lara, like, for things to become habits, you've got to just got to start doing tiny things. You don't have to go to the gym, eat healthily, get 9 hours sleep by 10 p.m. every night, like every day. That's not how, these are things like, okay, well, this week I'm going to focus on my sleep. So I'm just going to, doesn't matter what I eat, I'm just going to make sure I get to bed at 10 o'clock. So I am waking up rested and not crashing and burning throughout the next day. And then that's the way to do it. And then the following week, after you kind of nail doing the sleep thing for a little bit, then you start adding in other things. So you're like, just pick one thing. Whatever that one thing is, just do that. So if it's sleep, do that. If it's, I'm just going to sit down and be still and enjoy my cacao for 10 minutes in the morning, that's all you have to do. I'm just going to start with one thing. And that's going to be my your date with yourself. You're devoting time to project you, right? So that's how you start taking back control and start steering the ship. Because and I think starting in the mornings is finding something in the morning that you can do to set you up for your day is always very powerful. I really, really do believe that. And I like that you also kind of ascribe to that as well. Like, you start with, you don't have the phone in the room, so you get straight out of bed and go do your yoga practice. I think I'm going to start doing that, because the phone in the room thing and picking it up and checking the news, bad move.
Yeah, really bad move, especially in these times, because it would make me angry probably at the beginning of the day as well. But just to add to that for Charlene, that like, the new moon is today. New moons are like really good for setting intentions. And I think, Ray, you touched on intentions, but like, they really are about planting seeds. And I was also doing my own reflecting, obviously, this morning about the new moon and setting intentions. And I set intentions for a long time. And then last new moon, it didn't happen. For the first time ever, I was like, I'm not feeling called to set intentions. So again, I think it's about, they're not to make things restrictive or to create boundaries. Intentions for me mean that you have, like, I'm very much about living in the present moment. And so if you decided today, Charlene, for example, that you're going to set an intention, and that one intention might be, okay, I want to set one ritual for myself each day, and it's going to be for this long. And then, like Ray was saying about looking back and then looking forward, as much as I'm about the present moment, I think what it helps us to do with intentions is, I was like doing this morning, thinking that, like, the reflection avoids stagnation, if you like. So it means that we continue to grow. And that means that if we look back, we use that as a reflection. Then we go forward with our intention, and that's the motivation. But it's also holding ourselves accountable. So if we set this intention and we plant those seeds, you can even do that. I don't know, but I have seen them somewhere recently. There's little biodegradable paper where people write their intentions, and you actually plant them in your plant pot or out in the garden. But it's, and then you sort of have to surrender. There's a certain part of surrender in that as well, because it's not to beat yourself up over. So that's what I would say. It's about literally using it as a reflective tool and then using it as a motivator. And I love to call, what I generally say about myself is, I love to commune with myself. We would commune as women. Tonight I'm holding a red tent this evening, but we would love to commune as women. And so do that with yourself. We can do that with ourselves. But start small is what I would say, so it doesn't feel so, intimidating or over. It's not to add. It's, we have so much. It's not to add any more pressure to what we already live in, quite a fast-paced society. So it should be enjoyable and work for you. That's what I would say.
100%. So I was just thinking about the way that I sort of unwind and de-stress and reconnect with myself. So one of the ways is in the morning with this wonderful drink, and which has made such a difference to my life in a very short space of time. And then the second way is before bed, I like to journal. So that for me is one of my rituals, like journaling before bed and focusing mostly on gratitude. And that's one of the other reasons why I like doing my cacao in the morning too, because I kind of want to start and end my day with reflection of what's gone well throughout the day. So that's what I like to do it at night with the journaling, because I will write down, like, well, what are the things that have gone well today? And I try to find 3 to 5 things, within work, within relationships, within passions and pursuits, and also, with regard to my health, because that's a big deal for me. I came from a place where my stomach was really, really not well. I did not feel good about the future or my life. I was not very happy at all. There's a photo of me going into work in September 2015 that my flatmate had taken of me, and I keep it as a reminder of how far I've come, because I was crying before I went into work on a Monday morning, because that's just how I just used to be like, oh my God, I can't believe I've got to go do this. I'm in pain, and I've got to go suck it up and just get through a week, not just a day, but just get through this week. And this was long before, working from home became acceptable and all that sort of stuff too. So it was a very different time back in 2015. So starting the day with gratitude and reflecting and looking back on how far you've come, and ending the day that way as well, for me, is one of my rituals, and one that is actually scientifically proven to rewire the brain, because the brain is plastic. I don't know how many people are aware of that. So neuroplasticity is, we used to think that the brain was fully formed by the time we were adults. However, what we've seen is that the brain responds to stimuli. So whatever you are feeding your brain, whether that's food or what the thoughts that you're thinking or the people you're around, it's going to start responding to that. So you might be forming neural pathways that are negative when you could easily start, switching that around by actually focusing and consciously practicing gratitude, or yoga, let's say, and that starts to rewire your neural pathways into a positive space. And it has been proven to reduce depression and anxiety within as little as 2 weeks. I've seen it work for me within 7 days. Like when I've been conscientious and I have practiced. I remember last year for World Mental Health Day, lockdown, we were like 2 or 3 months into lockdown. I was separated from my husband. He was in the US. I was stuck here. I couldn't get home. It was very sad. I was all alone. I'm like in central London. Everything's shut down. Nothing's happening. It was cold. It wasn't great. And I remember doing the gratitude practice, and 7 days, like I think by the 4th day, I just started to be happier, lighter, just more joyful. And I started looking for more things to bring me joy as well. I bought a trampoline. I was like, okay, this is going to get me out of my funk. Because one of the things that was frustrating me was that I couldn't go to the gym and I couldn't exercise. And all I was doing was sitting on the couch. And, I just started looking for more and more ways to find things to bring into my life that would make me happy. I was like, okay, what are the things that make me happy? Right. Exercise makes me happy. Okay, how can I get more exercise? All right, what are the things that make me happy? Baking makes me happy. All right, I don't want to bake yucky things. Let me bake, yummy things. And then when you create something that's healthy and also yummy, something gluten-free or whatever, then you're like, okay, and you spend more time, and I think that's the importance of rituals as well. Like if we can think about devoting more time toward things that bring us joy, then we're more likely to feel more balanced. Our hormones are more likely to be more balanced. Our mood is more likely to be balanced. And of course, all the other health benefits when it comes to, reversing health conditions, IBS, all that kind of stuff, like reducing anxiety. So
I think it's so crucial, Ray, so I've always done this gratitude thing, but I also have a practice where I literally you have it's a mudra actually, but you place it on the abdomen and the yoni mudra, and you essentially say that you're drawing back all energy in time, space, etc. Now, I do this before I go to sleep, but the gratitude thing I use a lot with my clients, and actually what they say, and the feedback is always that even if they've thought, because nobody's day is rubbish from start to finish unless we tell ourselves that story. And they go, I actually didn't realize that there were good things that happened. And because they got essentially into that practice of having to think, well, actually, yeah, that was good. You're going to bed rather than that story of, oh, today was terrible. And then waking up in that that mindset. And like you say, it changes. Our brain, everything is so changeable. And I think we can forget that. So that it's such a crucial practice to end the day, or saying that, because if you're someone who's very much an empath and you give out a lot and your energy gets drained, because we are drained, in that way, then you're drawing the energies back to yourself. And you can do that with an essential oil again, for example. But they're important practices. Again, the cacao, I always prepare my cacao and I sprinkle organic rose petals on top. And it's so pretty. It's just, that fills my heart. It's heart medicine, but it fills my heart. The joy of, and then the smell, I take moments to smell it because the cacao is divine, and again, it's good for us. So it's not to say, sometimes I have cacao twice a day because actually for me, it has quite a sedative effect. So it's actually fine for me. Some people, it's not so good at night. Just depends on your individuality again. But it's, simple things like that, sprinkling some flowers, on top of your cacao again, or just smelling the cacao and knowing that actually what you're taking into your body is actually good for you is huge. So, yeah.
So this is a wonderful segue into Emily's question about tell us about Cacao Ceremony. So just to give everybody a little bit of background, I've been obsessed with cacao since I was a little girl. So my great grandfather actually had a cacao farm or estate, whatever they call it back then. And my father decided to revive this practice of growing cacao and making chocolate at home on the stove, grinding beans himself, roast. And then it never turned out very well back then when I was little. Okay, it was always extremely bitter, and I was like, oh, like how come Cadbury's taste so different to this? Like I don't understand. Well, now I understand. Like they add a lot of milk and sugar and other additives to it. Since then, my dad has gotten a lot better at making chocolate, and they actually my family make their own chocolate now, which is quite exciting. But ceremonial grade cacao is the stuff that actually, it's very coarse, so it's not very fine like cocoa powder. It has been dried by the sun. And you were just talking about people's bio-individuality. So the first time I think I ever had like ceremonial grade cacao, like I got very stimulated because it's got a compound called theobromine, which is like caffeine. And I was just sort of like, wow, my brain is buzzing. Like I had like all these ideas. And I remember thinking like, and I sat down and I did, intentions and all that, but I was very, very like active, and I could dream, and I was like, oh, I know where I could see myself, and all sorts of very cool things happened to me very shortly after that. Like within the space of a week, a bunch of very, very cool things happened to me by doing that. Because I remember feeling very, very just kind of electric. I don't know how else to describe it. Now, for somebody with an ADHD brain, it actually helps you focus because the theobromine is balanced by the magnesium component in cacao, and magnesium is a relaxant. So even though you have got all this stimulation going on, you can still sit down and focus really, really well. And one of the ways that I actually help balance out that kind of no, I don't get jitters, but if I remember having it at night once without what I'm going to tell you now. And I did sort of like stay awake because I was just like, oh, I have so much to do. And like, I wanted to clean the house, and I was just sort of like, I had a ton of energy. So there's a way to balance that out. I add a little bit of fat to it. So you can either add coconut oil, or for me, I like adding like a cacao butter or a cashew nut butter. And I use a frother, which is like an electric whisk, and it just blends it all in. And you can add a very tiny amount of maple syrup to it just to kind of take the edge off. And I balance things out with like cinnamon, cloves, like other spices that sort of help balance blood sugar as well. And it tastes really, really good. It's like going, when with my husband, he's like, let's go to Starbucks. I'm like, why? I don't want to go there. Like, I've got my drink. And I drive with it. I'm like, it's coming with me, and I have one of these cups that keeps everything hot, right, for a while. So I'm like, I don't want to drink anything toxic from Starbucks. I want to walk around with my yummy organic ceremonial grade cacao with my organic maple syrup and my, good almond butter or cacao butter in it, and stuff that satiates you as well. And I don't know if you also do this, but I add like a tiny amount of collagen to it just as for me, for protein, because I think like if I'm having any sort of sugars or whatever, I like to combine the protein with the fat and the small amount of carbohydrate just to slow down any conversion of glucose, from the maple syrup. I don't put a lot of maple syrup in. It's like I
don't put the collagen or but so there's a big thing with ceremonial grade cacao, because obviously ceremonial grade cacao has certain things. I think Ray, I was a practitioner for Keith's Cacao, which is from Guatemala, and then I'm a facilitator for Cacao with a K, which you've got there, I think. Have you got the blend there? I think you've got the blend.
This is the signature blend by Fly Cacao. Yeah. I think their cacao it's Peruvian cacao, so it's from South America. And the signature blend actually has a tiny amount of chili in it, and also a small amount of something called panela and a little bit of organic vanilla bean.
Yeah. So, which they also do. They do one where it doesn't have any additions, because I know some people can't have chili.
So Emily just said that. She's just like, can you share the one without the chili, please? So there's just like a straight blend. It's not a blend. It's just pure cacao, no blend.
And that's Cacao with a K, but that's from like Peru. And then there's Keith's Cacao, which is from Guatemala, and that is nothing. That is just pure cacao. But again, that's another whole, maybe another another episode, I think. But in terms of the ceremony, I think it was it Emily who was asking about the ceremony. It's it's what you want it to be, Emily, and it's literally sitting intentionally. How I like to do it, if you were just doing something simple as a 10-minute practice, is I would sit and I give gratitude for the cup of cacao to all the hands that brought her to mine. And I always give thanks because I feel like she danced her way into my life back in 2016. So it is literally, even when you're making it, and I would say, you know, the one key thing if you want to make cacao is don't ever overheat it, a bit like coffee. So don't ever overheat it because it literally will distort the flavour. I never ever heat mine over 55 degrees, which is a perfect temperature to drink it at. But the ceremony side of things is, you know, it might just be that you light a candle, you intentionally make your cacao. If you're making it on the hob, you can do it with a whisk, add in spices. Cinnamon is nice as well. And then you intentionally drink it, you give thanks. The smell is divine. You would, you know, who doesn't love chocolate, but you will love the smell. And yeah, so they're two. I work with two. And the reason I work with two is because I tried lots of cacaos, because at one point you couldn't get Keith's cacao from Guatemala. And I'm all about sustainability. And I want to support the farmers in Peru, and I want to support the farmers. They're two different ceremonial grade cacao. So one is chincho and one is criollo. And for me, they're the masculine and the feminine. And I'm trying to create that balance. I think we were speaking about equilibrium at the beginning. So I'm always trying to create balance, and that's why I work with both. So in my workshops and ceremonies, I do both. Yeah, they have it in Trinidad as well.
Yeah, those are the beans. Those are the beans that I know pretty well. And you know what we used to do when I was growing up, we would cut the raw cacao in half, and then you would suck on it, like when, you know, before it's roasted and dried and all that sort of stuff. And in order for it to kiss the sun, what we would do, we have like a drying house, and the top of the house, the roof would be on a slider, like it would just not detach, but just roll away. And it's the same thing that we used to do for drying coffee. So that's how you get the sun to kiss it. So you put it up there in the it's not like an attic, but it's you know, it's elevated away from everything else. There's other stuff going on downstairs, and it's up on this roof, and then the roof slides off and the sun hits it and dries it. So it's kissed by the sun. I talked about magnesium. I talked about theobromine. The other thing that it's really rich in is anandamide. And I think it's one of the only foods that I know of that's actually got that molecule. It's the bliss molecule, and I believe that is exactly what we feel when we are after we make love. So it's very, very rare to find it through food. So it can be like, some people say that, you know, I had a friend who used to swear he'd get high off of drinking the ceremonial grade cacao. I was like, well, I don't get high. I get very stimulated, but it's not, I don't, you know, there's no dopiness to it. Like, to me, I think it's relaxing, but it's not dopey. It's not like a dopey relaxation.
It's like a clear focus with creativity.
Yeah.
And it brings creativity. But the anandamide, you're right. And it is, you know, ananda in yoga, in Sanskrit, means bliss.
Yeah. Exactly.
And it's, you know, but we are the only, and that's the only other, it's only been found in cacao, but it's easily depleted in us. So it gives you like the whole serotonin aspect. So it makes you feel good. It makes you feel good in a good way, not fuzzy way. It's but of course everybody is different. So everybody reacts. And the ceremonial dose is 42 grams. That's what I have. But essentially, you know, if you're starting out, you'd only have, say, 20 grams. Some people like to make it with milk. I like to keep mine really pure, so I just have it with water. But they do, you know, that Keith's cacao and cacao with a K I know they have around 55% cacao butter. Mm-hmm. And that's essentially what makes the ceremonial grade cacao, is that they use traditional methods. So they use stone grinders. Mm-hmm. You know, the nutrients from the sun, like you say, it's like everything, it's like us, you know, the nutrients that come from the sun, the plants, they're plant medicine, essentially, that are filled with goodness and nourishment from Mother Earth. But, you know, they're the things that actually make, so it has the cacao butter, they don't take it out. So if you were buying cacao powder, for example, that's not the same, it's not ceremonial, because they strip away the butter, which is why So cacao here, they grind it for you. Keith's cacao is in the block. This would go back to block if you left it outside in the sun, because it's got the cacao butter in it. So cacao's been really good in that they make it easy because they grind it for you.
It's still quite coarse though. It doesn't dissolve very well. So just be mindful of that. Like it's quite coarse. And so with the block, I'm guessing you grate it yourself. You grate or you grind?
You just grate it off. And then I generally make mine in a Thermomix because it has a temperature in it. It gets rid of the granule side. But if you start off in your pan, you can actually make a paste. You shouldn't have dairy. So I just saw Charlene's message. You shouldn't have dairy because it inhibits the cacao essentially, without going too technical. So if you want to have
a trigger, so if you're like on a restricted diet or you've got an autoimmune condition, we want you to be staying away from any kind of autoimmune type triggers, and gluten, dairy, sugar. Those are the top 3 culprits.
Yeah. So any plant-based milk, if you wanted to have it with milk. Yeah, Plenish is a good one. Or Rude Health. There's oat milk. We're so lucky. There's so many on the market. And of course you can make your own as well.
Yeah, if you've got a Vitamix or a Thermomix, you can make your own.
Yeah. So it's great. And that in itself, that might be your new ritual, for example. That might be your self-care. It's a good alternative. And it's a healthy one, and serves, I think there's something like 300 essential nutrients and minerals in there. So with cacao, so you're getting a lot of benefit, and especially as women, it's also balancing. I know that it's balanced my hormones massively since I've been sitting with it every day. But I went through since 2016, I've gone through periods where I know your body will tell you if you tune in if it's for you or not, and how much to have. And that's the beauty of it, because it really, it also is a vasodilator. So it opens, that's why they call it heart medicine. Yeah. So it's also a vasodilator.
Yeah. But, that's one of the things that I remember hearing about it, that it was going to improve blood flow to the brain and blood flow to other areas. I was at a biohackers conference, and someone came up to talk about how it was improving blood flow to other areas for men. Inez is laughing. Yeah. So I was like, I came here to hear about the brain. I don't really want to hear about the other brain. So, because obviously it's improving blood flow to the brain. It will improve blood flow to other places. So I was like, great. Well, we're at time, but this has been so much fun. Like, I love doing these. I love your wisdom and your beautiful energy. And I know that we're going to say goodbye to people. I want to thank everybody for joining and spending time with us on a Thursday evening, a cold winter's Thursday evening. I do wish we could all get something warm, but if we don't have anything with us, maybe we could just set an intention for what we want to do over the next month between now and the next new moon. And if you feel so led to write it down, that might be nice, or share it in the chat. Just take a minute and think about it, and maybe close your eyes and just kind of tune into who it is or what it is that you want to call in. What kind of energy you want to call in over the next month. Do you want to create more peace in your life? Do you want to create more space for looking after yourself? Do you want to eat well? Do you want to feel more energized? Do you want to feel supported? Do you want to feel loved? Whatever that is, maybe think up a word that's going to be your theme, and then a corresponding I am to go along with it. And feel free to write it down. Stick it up on your computer, your fridge, on your phone. And Inez says, I just want to be me. And lots of kisses. Thank you. And just be happy being you, right? I want to draw energy back to you. I have a top tip for that. Joe Dispenza's book, or you can download it as an audiobook because I like listening to it as an audiobook, Becoming Supernatural. He goes through some really phenomenal exercises on how to start, I don't want to call it balancing your chakras, but just about recharging your energy centers. That's probably the best way to describe it. It's like chapter 3 or chapter 4, talking about like that root chakra and then the sacral chakra. So becoming supernatural. Wonderful. I want to draw balance back into my life. That's amazing. And for me, I think I'm on the same page with you, Charlene. I want to draw some balance back into my life where I've got more joy and less noise from the outside world. I want to focus on my inner world.
I've got to stay out of the room, Ray. No mobile, no devices in the room, and then try to go beyond that looking or checking. And
yes, let's set that. I'm with you, girl. Yeah, I'm drawing balance back into my life. No devices in my room. That's the first step for me. All right.
Mine is great. Mine is grace, just more grace. For the grace to I love the word grace anyway, but it's when things get out of balance or we don't feel that we can control something so much, and it feels a little bit like the world feels like that at the moment. That I have the grace just to accept things and to move through challenges with more grace, and not to get caught up on them. So yeah, Emily, you can use that really powerful, the yoni mudra. Just create that mudra and you place it down, so it's like a downward triangle, and then you just have that drawing back that your energy, and you take 3 deep inhales and exhales, and then you're drawing the energy with the inhale back into your body from the day. So hopefully that helps.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your great.
Thank you for inviting me.
I've loved this.
Right. And I didn't have cacao. I've got a herbal tea. I don't know. I'll just share what message. I don't know what message is on there. Actually, I didn't check before we started.
The Yogi tea.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have cute little, fortune cookie messages.
Your soul is your highest self.
Very beautiful.
Connection to self is key. So.
I pulled a card. So I got these Rumi cards for my birthday.
Oh.
They're Rumi Oracle cards, and it says Dance of the Divine Feminine. I haven't read what it says yet, but I'm going to go check it out. But I thought, it's very pretty. And I want to check out what it means, and I'll share it with you guys in the replay when I send out the replay, okay?
Oh, that would be lovely, Ray. Thank you.
All right. Well, everybody, go enjoy your evening. Thank you so much for your time and for your questions. I loved them all. Loved connecting with all of you. I hope you've enjoyed this, and we will see you very, very soon.